Hey, so I was wrong about the Kendrick and Drake beef. When I say that, what I mean is I'm a rap fan. I'm a rapper. Like, this is the world I come from. And one thing I can tell you about rappers, people like me, specifically lyrical rappers, is that for the most part, we're all Kendrick Lamar fans. So I was never in a position to be like, oh no, this ain't it. No, I loved it. I loved every second of it. But a while back on a community post that I can't even find at this point, I said that in the grand scheme of things, this isn't important. It's just music. It's a couple of rich guys going at each other over their pride and bragging rights and even some aspect of the culture, which is great, but it's not important. And when you talk about the things I talk about, scams, financial education, what's happening to our people, and who's doing it and ways to solve it, it can make you feel like, no, this is bull. This is a distraction. And while that might still be true, I think I was wrong to say that it doesn't matter. In this human experience we have, what matters is highly subjective. For somebody who draws inspiration from and motivation from these figures, these larger than life rap figures, this is one of the most important things, right? It's a battle of wills, it's a battle of culture versus culture, or culture vulture versus somebody who's actually born and raised in it. And so I was wrong to say it wasn't important. And what put me over the edge was that Super Bowl performance. I mean, yeah, it was Euphoria. It was Meet the Grams. It was Not Like Us. It was the video, but like, algorithm. So I've mentioned I'm a rapper. I performed with a band back when I did my thing, right? I considered what I did to be art, to be a statement every time I went out there. And that's exactly what Kendrick did at the Super Bowl. It's what I would have done if I had his resources. The positioning of the people on the game board, the subliminal messages, rolling out Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam, the positioning of the flag, him within that flag, the references to historical pictures and artifacts, censoring of his language, but also the tweaking of his language to send messages that weren't apparent to casual viewers. It was supremely artistic and super inspiring. And I think for the general audience out there, YouTube viewers of videos like this one, maybe it's helpful if y'all hear this from the perspective of somebody who makes rap music. I don't know how many reviews you've watched from people like that. It's probably mostly YouTubers who talk about culture and music and movies and stuff, giving you their perspective on this rap thing. But I've written hundreds of rap songs. I've performed on festival stages, and I was never a major artist by any means. I'm not even claiming that I am. But I do have a look behind the curtain of how the industry works, how rappers are fueled, what makes them tick. And this is my perspective. It's the feeling. A lot of rap is feeling. A lot of what people are deriving from this is a feeling of good versus bad, quote unquote, or to be more precise with it, genuine versus artificial. Now, I'll be the first person to say I was a Drake fan. I enjoyed Comeback Season. That was the kind of the first mixtape that brought him to my attention. But So Far Gone is the one that rocketed him to star status and set the trajectory for what he eventually became. But the thing about Comeback Season is it was lyrical. Like he was taking a page out of the book of the heavyweights that came before him, the hardcore lyricists, the Little Brothers, lyrical predecessors from the 90s, the mid 90s, the early 90s, people that he was undoubtedly raised on. And to me, his transition to what the type of music he was making on So Far Gone was a marker. It was a it was a flag that said, I'm after something different now. I'm not trying to make the supreme artistic product, even though some of my songs are still that. Like he had was Say What's Wrong? So Far Gone track list. I think Say What's Real. Was it Say What's Real? It was Say What's Real. Tracks like Say What's Real on So Far Gone that really give you a look into his melodic abilities as well as his lyrical abilities were what set it off for me. You could go with Ignorant or Houston, Atlanta, Vegas, and songs like this, like that are more surface level. Best I Ever Had, things like that are clearly designed to be hits. But for me, it was tracks like Say What's Real that really set him apart and made him a force to be reckoned with, like a serious, serious artist that I respected and that I enjoyed. And I'll tell you right now what changed that. It was the fact that he never grew up. What do I mean by grow up? I mean, I've been a Kendrick fan for as long as far as the career trajectory goes as I've been a Drake fan. I discovered him back on Section 80. And that came across my radar as this mixtape that a lot of friends of mine were sharing and really excited about. And honestly, it's an album, but nobody called it an album back then. We thought it was a mixtape. Section 80 obviously hit me in a completely different way than a Comeback Season or a So Far Gone ever could. It was clear that this person was not what we expected to come out of a place like Compton, but something different, something more inspired, more innovative than what we had been hearing in hip hop up to that point. And I'm not really a person who lives in the past, so my memory is not going to be the best when it comes to what happened when and how it happened. But I do remember the feeling that things give me. And Section 80 made me feel like I was there. And it told me stories from the perspective of people like the Keisha character, whether that's a character or a real person, and Tammy. It put me in their shoes and had me deal with things that women in oppressed neighborhoods go through. Stories that you would know from, the Brenda's Got a Babies of the world, right? But it had never been told like that, at least not by an artist that I was listening to. And again, you can focus on the high powers and the rigor mortis, which are amazing songs. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But I think digging below the surface to the songs that aren't played as much, that focus on vices, that focus on socioeconomic damage done by the Ronald Reagan era, which is a whole theme running through that project. I think that is where the difference lies, and that's where the difference has always lain between Drake and Kendrick. Kendrick is a deeply thoughtful, deeply innovative artist who doesn't want to just innovate and make a lot of money and succeed. He wants to bring his people with him. And he wants to subvert expectations and change, not simultaneously change how people see Compton, but also shove Compton in the world's face and be like, this is what we are. You have to accept us because we're this great at our craft. I think that's the best way to describe Kendrick. And Drake is a big fan of the culture and a student of the culture to the point where he became better at some of the melodic elements than a lot of other artists ever will be, and good enough at the lyrical elements to deserve the respect that he earned as a lyricist at times. His, whatever AM in whatever place series of tracks are impressive, are consistently impressive. And it's not just those, but that's an example I can give you to be like, yeah, Drake can rap. I think trying to take that away from him is ridiculous. He's earned his place in hip hop, but there's an omission of action, an omission of participation in the dirtier, more real aspects of being a black man involved in a genre that was built on black men and women, not using that to improve the lives of his people. I say his people, but it's more tangential in his case, whereas with Kendrick, it is his people directly, the people he grew up with. Now, that brings me to the topic of race. Drake is half black, and there's a lot of people who are half black watching this who are like, what you got to say? What you got to say? I'm about to type something in the comments. I have nothing negative to say about the percentage of someone's genetic makeup that is whatever race. To me, that's an irrelevant detail in most contexts. I'm a very unabashedly pro-black person. Like, when I got to college, I actually had a decision to make because I was raised in all white schools. And I'm a military kid. That's the reason why. A lot of traveling, and most places are just white, at least most of the places I lived.
Drake claims he wasn't cool in high school. What made you uncool?
I just didn't. There was a. It wasn't that I wasn't cool. It was that the kids that were cool, I wasn't on their wavelength, which made me sort of uncool, I guess. So like, it was. I just always felt like an outsider. I went when I was in Forest Hill. It was an all Jewish school, like, and just being biracial but still being Jewish, so I was like kind of connected to the kids but like sort of distant. And when kids are young, they don't necessarily comprehend everything.
Right.
So it can get a little cruel and a little mean.
You get teased a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I got it,
I could have gone either way. I could have veered into hanging with mostly white people and splitting those worlds, right? Similar to how I was in high school, I gravitated towards the minorities, towards people who were living on the fringes, sometimes people who are just outside of the popular kids in the black community. I've always had something pulling at my psyche to include, reference, and act as a voice for people who don't take center stage, people who the country and our society as a whole don't focus on. Those people, to me, need more representation. They need more advocacy. And besides the fact, I just love black people. I don't, I'm not trying to get overly complicated with this. I love black people. I live in Atlanta, and I've lived in Atlanta since 2008 when I went to college. And the reason I went to college in Atlanta from Orlando, Florida, which is where I went to high school, is because I visited the campus and I saw the city and I saw Clark Atlanta and Spelman and Morehouse and all that, and in such close vicinity. And I was like, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I belong here and I'm happy here. And even if my classes are hard, which they were, and I barely make it out of Georgia Tech, which I was about to before I changed majors, this feels right. That college experience that I just described to you translates directly to Kendrick versus Drake. I listen to Kendrick's songs and they feel like I know that person. I've known that person. As much as I think about black history and what we've been through and how infuriating it is that we built this country and we continue to be oppressed by it over and over and over again. And we're expected to swallow their leaders and their policies and their open disdain for us decade after decade after decade. I understand Kendrick. I feel Kendrick. And I'm not saying Drake is not a great artist. What I'm saying is that I don't feel him. And it became more and more and more the case over time. The more music Drake makes, the more he exposes that he is not one of us.
Cause I need something to balance out the fact that it's hard to find a woman when you talented and black. When you hollering at labels and they silencing you back. Cause you fail to thoroughly discuss some violence in your track. Well,
I'm not saying he's not black. I mean, he's not one of us. He's looking through a telescope because he feels he's outside of the culture. The thing is, I think it's his decision. I'm not saying he is this person and he always is this person and will never change. Maybe he won't. What I'm saying is that his position from outside looking in is his fault. Like, he never took the opportunity to actually lean in, to actually be a part. It's more like, oh, this is the blueprint for how to become a successful rap artist.
thinking out loud. I must have $250,000 on me right now. Hard to make a song about something better than the money. Two things I'm about it, talking blunt and staying bloody. Pretty bitches out your ear. You see the fleet of all my new things. I'm copping cars with my loose change. All white like I move things. Niggas see me rolling and they mood change.
This is a bop. But what we lost was this.
I've always been something that these labels can't buy, especially if they trying to take a piece of my soul.
Everybody say it with me. They bought you. Opposed to making the most authentic, the most black experience you can for your listeners and followers and all that, and letting it happen organically, which is exactly what Kendrick Lamar did. He never changed who he is to fit the fact that he is a superstar now, the fact that he is arguably the most talented superstar rapper on the planet. It's never shown in his behavior and the way he moves. Whereas with Drake, it's shown in every aspect of his being. I don't like to get overly personal when I analyze this type of stuff, but there's something about Drake that kind of just brings all this home. It's the tattoos. The man is clearly trying to belong so badly that he'll permanently put figures that have nothing to do with the majority of hip hop culture, like LeBron James, on his body. People like Aaliyah, who we all, revere within the music community, and she's gone too soon, and we love Aaliyah, right? But I think drawing a parallel between how Kendrick made a tribute to Aaliyah.
Yep, that's exactly what this sound like, but never will I ever forget Left Eye.
And how Drake made a tribute to Aaliyah by essentially trying to resurrect her dead corpse with a song by her featuring him. I know her fam probably had to sign off on this and the label and all that, but there's no world in which this song needs to exist. You don't even know if she would have liked you if she was still alive, bruh. And I know y'all gonna bring up a bunch of songs people made after people died, but I think all of it is up. And putting her on his body, that's not even it. He's got Sade, Rihanna. I feel like you're forcing yourself on a bunch of people that can't stand up for themselves. It's weird. It's weird. Another piece of criticism that goes both ways in this beef. Don't really like how assault and pedophilia was used as a prop in this beef. That's not cool. These are two different ways that two different types of people would acknowledge somebody that we all appreciate, whose work we all appreciate and who we miss. It's a clear illustration of how one person feels or has positioned themselves from the outside looking in, and how another person actually understands the impact of that person, but also understands the gravity of the moment. Kendrick will make songs that are bigger than the topic that they're about every time. No song, almost no song he's made is about that one thing. It takes a 30,000 foot approach and zooms in at different times in different verses to that topic. Even Not Like Us was not entirely focused on the me versus you, this is a diss. He ended it trying to tell a story and educate us on, or educate those of us who don't know, on why, exactly why he feels that Drake is a person who deserves this attack. It's bigger than the song being danceable and being a bop. Like that was the moment that this became that it was that was the moment that it was a rap. Like it was over at that point. It was like he broke down how Drake has been a culture vulture, how Drake has refused to grow up, to acknowledge the moment, to acknowledge the stakes, to stop tap dancing for his larger audience and focus on his blackness. I acknowledge that maybe Drake doesn't want to be, all like super black, but the thing is, he chooses to pick these fights and pick these battles and continue these battles because he didn't pick all of them, but continue these battles and demean people who mean a lot to hip hop culture, who come from hip hop culture and who come from more desperate backgrounds and desperate situations. And I think his supreme arrogance to think that he is a person who can downplay a Meek Mill, downplay a Pusha T, and downplay a Common. I mean, Common? He's tripping. He's tripping. To even take a shot at Common in any circumstance is a wild thing for him to do. This is putting it in perspective, and I'm bringing it home. For him to think that he can go to war with a Kendrick Lamar and survive it. I think it's a product of his status. Of course, he's the biggest rapper on earth, but it's also a product of his arrogance. And I think that arrogance can only be born from being on the outside looking in and desperately wanting to be a part of that club. And what we don't respect about Drake, I say we, the collective we, including people who see eye to eye with Kendrick Lamar's perspective in this. What we don't see, why he needs to pretend that he's hard. He's not. I'm not. I might be harder than him, but I'm not hard. I'm not, I'm a tough person. I'm a tough person in my own ways. I had to be tough to get to the point where I'm talking to y'all right now. But I'm not that kind of tough. And I'm fine with that. I'm not from that world. It's not something that I need to pretend. Stop. You got to stop. People who pretend to be something they're not will eventually get called out for it. That's just what's happening. This is Drake's reckoning. This was always going to happen. And it actually took somebody of Kendrick Lamar's stature in the game to actually pull it off. Am I saying that Drake's career is over? No, I'm not, because I know how capitalism works. Drake has produced so much money for so many people that he'll never truly go away. But what's going to make his recovery more difficult, and circling back to my original point, is that he never grew up. He's been making music for the 18 to 24-year-old demographic since he was 18 to 24 years old. That's my core problem with an artist like Drake. There are no layers to him. There's just a music corporation and very limited soul and personality underneath it. I don't feel your soul when you make hits. I don't feel like I'm drawing closer to your experience in life and the message you're trying to send. I feel like I just heard a bop and I'm going to play it on repeat because it's an earworm, and your melodic skills are top notch. But I don't know who you are, man. And I'm not sure you do either. I didn't even mean for this to get all deep and philosophical, but I do mean to say that I was wrong. This matters. It's a watershed moment obviously for a diss track to win 5 Grammys and then be rolled out on the Super Bowl stage in the first headlining rap act, if you don't count Dr. Dre, because he's both. But definitely the first solo, that's history. No matter how you want to slice it, that's history. It's inescapable. It's an inescapable fact. What I saw on that field was the self-actualization of a person who's been working towards this for decades, their entire life. And given where he comes from, It is the perfect example of the American dream. The real American dream, and not the one that's been perverted by right-leaning extremists. Now, I take issue with the NFL and all that kind of so I don't see it as the ultimate accomplishment, and I'm sure Kendrick doesn't either, and that's the difference. If Drake played the halftime show, he would probably think it was one of the biggest things he's ever done in his life, and he's done a lot in his life. He's been inarguably the most successful rapper we've ever seen. But nothing he's done has ever touched the gravity and the cultural relevance of what Kendrick just pulled off in less than a year. I appreciate y'all being here. If you're new here, I'm Cam James. I talk about scams, financial education, socially relevant topics to the Black community. And I'm really, really, really proud to be Black, and I'm really proud of Kendrick Lamar.